Hey cuties, I'm Miles Sexton, a content creator, activist, and loud and proud disruptor of the norm. On our private bits, we talk about the things and people that don't get talked about enough, or at all. Trust me, as a sober, HIV positive, non-binary person, I would know. Join me as I chat with people in my life and from around the world whose stories deserve to be heard. Maybe you'll learn something new and you will definitely LOL. Our Private Bits is also part of the Acast Creator Network. All right, cuties. Today on Our Private Bits, we have Jazmine Carter, and that's Jasmine with a Z, not an S. I don't want to getting it mixed up. Joining us, who is a trans model, ballroom star, host mother, and one of the newest Sexfluent squad members. Want to say hi, Jasmine?
Hi, everybody.
I am so happy that we get to do this episode together because I was just like enamored first by your beauty the first time we met.
Sweet.
And then I'm like, oh my God, this person is also just like so incredible, has an incredible journey, has been on an incredible journey, is so smart, and is just like so passionate about so many things that I am also so passionate about. So I can't wait to dive into it with you.
Thank you. I'm so grateful to be here. I wish you guys could all be here because the room is just gorgeous. The vibe is gorgeous. It's warm, it's welcoming. And it's Transgender Awareness Week, which is like the best.
Perfect timing.
Yeah.
To record this. So I guess for viewers who don't know you, I would love if you could maybe just share like a little bit of like what your journey has sort of been, especially when it comes to your transition.
Yeah, totally. So I feel like my transition's a bit more unconventional. So I like to tell this story because I don't have the same story where like, you know, I felt really innately at a young age that I knew I was trans. Like I really came to the conclusion when I was 18. So like I had a really privileged upbringing in the sense that like I was already really tiny framed. Like I privileged in the sense like I already fit like the female mold pretty seamlessly where like tiny frame, long hair, you know, feminine features in the face. So like I was already able to like when I was playing with makeup and hair and my version of drag, which wasn't like drag queen, but more like a hyper realism version of drag where it was just more gender bending back and forth. I was totally comfortable being a boy that like gender bent and went back and forth, and that was androgynous and that was non-binary. Like I loved the in-between. And it was really only until I was like 18, 19 where like the male puberty was like finalizing.
Okay.
Or like going into the next phase where like I was growing a beard and I was growing a bit more muscle definition. And then I was really looking into the mirror thinking like, okay, this is not where I want it to go. You know, I feel more confident, more authentic when I look in the mirror, and I am on the spectrum of more hyper feminine or womanhood. And so that's when I made the decision like, okay, I want to transition. I would like to get on HRT. I did try to freeze my sperm. It was really expensive. I was like, it's just not going to happen. It's not for me. And then, so I've been transitioning almost 3 years medically, emotionally, physically with my friends. And it's been like, I don't regret it at all. It's been the best journey. My only slight regret is I wish I found more beauty in the in-between when I was there. And that sort of like fluidness that I have, because I think it's such a magical gift that like we're gifted as queer people that like not everybody in the world gets the opportunity to do that.
It's so true.
And it's so powerful. And like we feel so othered and outside and like we don't fit in. And I tried so hard to fit in. And it was like, that is truly a gift. Like I wish I valued it more.
Do you think that you can like discover or like kind of like flow into that fluidity now? Like now that you were sort of like in this phase of your transition?
I think because of like as queer people, like we don't get to date in high school.
Yes.
Right.
Totally.
So like I'm so, and this is just me being honest, at my age, at this point in time, I am so infatuated with boys and with dating that I do place super heavy into the hyper femininity role. So I don't know if I could do it right now, but I think as I get older, I want to drop some of it because I do feel like it gets a little bit toxic. And there, like you can only keep up the hyper femininity act for so long. Like I have one day a week where I dyke it out. I don't know if I could say that here.
Yeah.
Okay, where I drop everything. Like I really step into my masculine. I don't want to be perceived. I don't want to be sexualized. And like, I just want to go outside, like hair in a bun, like a bit more masculine dominating. Like those stuff, that balance is still important to me for sure.
Totally. And I mean, at the end of the day, I think the person that you eventually hopefully are going to be with, you know, I think you would want them to love both parts,
all
of their parts of yourself, you know, not just like the hyper femininity, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And I think it, you know, it comes and flows, right? I think it's like when I look back, on my journey, I think there's moments where like, I was like so into my femininity and then like I kind of like then went over to my masculinity and it's like
Mhm.
I just think as we evolve as people, like we shouldn't feel that we like have to stay within like
Agreed.
one category regardless of how we identify. I think it's okay to
Totally.
like flow between our masculinity and our femininity and that's like the beauty of being human.
Agreed. And I think that is like applicable for cis people. Like
Totally.
everybody has both in them. And so it's really like I think if we get to a place in society where everyone feels comfortable enough to be fluid in that,
Yes.
be so much more like just less toxic and less trying to appease to somebody's gaze or to somebody's just
Totally.
like what they expect of you. It's like you could be, if you're a cis man, you could be a little bit feminine. You can like tap into that and like let it flow.
Yeah, agreed, agreed. I So just to go back like a little bit on your journey and your story. So you started HRTs?
HRT.
HRT.
Yeah.
How old were you when you
18.
18?
Hmm.
Okay. So and like did you notice like did it like what was like the first thing I guess maybe like you noticed when you started your hormone replacement therapy?
So my doctor wanted me to start the testosterone blockers first.
Yes.
So I
Okay.
started testosterone blockers with no estrogen. So it
Okay.
was kind of like removing something without
Mhm.
adding it. So I was like really tired. Yeah, it was mostly just really tired. And then I was like, we did that I think for a month. We did it just to make sure there's no side effects.
Yes.
Did that for a month and then we added an estrogen. And now estrogen, sister, that's a real deal. Okay. Estrogen is no joke. That's when I was like super, I mean, it's exactly what you hear. You're super emotional.
Yes.
Um, like there's obviously physical changes that you start going through. But I
Mhm.
think the biggest thing that people miss the mark on talking on when it comes to HRT is the mental transition you go through. And like
Mhm.
I really, after I'd say the course of like 3 months, like you really start to, I don't know how to explain this, but you think like a girl and it's like your
Mhm.
brain changes. And I think some of it is based off of sex because you're no longer thinking, I don't know how much I can say about this without being too explicit.
Oh no, we talk about everything here.
Okay. So you go from like thinking like a teenage boy, where you're
Yes.
like thinking with your penis, right?
Totally.
And like not that sex is your motivating force, but that's kind of your driving force. Like it almost
Yes.
navigates your world because
Yeah.
there's so much testosterone in you. You can't help but think about it and whatever. And like, so you take that out and now you're replacing it with estrogen. Like the world, you just perceive the world differently. And
Hmm.
those things that you maybe not necessarily valued, but like you chased after it, you looked for, like, they don't uphold the same weight that they used to.
Interesting.
And like, I think that was like a really big, like almost like a post nut clarity, but
Yeah.
forever moment for me.
Do you feel like when you had that shift, is that when you felt like you were like fully in, like your trans like woman identity? Like was that the moment that where you really felt the shift was like the mental part of it versus the physical?
I think so. Honestly, I don't think I felt that shift until like maybe like 6 months ago, where I really
Mhm.
felt like solidified in my like where I
Okay.
am with my transition.
What do you think solidified it?
I think like I've been doing it for so I feel like I have a really good grasp of my transition now.
Yeah.
Like I don't feel like I'm chasing a result or I'm chasing,
Mhm.
like I'm waiting. Like when I first started, I was like, oh, I can't wait to be a year on HRT and have
Mhm.
like, breast growth or like to see the changes happen and stuff. Like I'm not no longer waiting for things. I'm like
Yeah.
now I'm just like living in the moment.
Totally. Because I think yeah, I think a lot of it can be, like, these little, like, micro triggers or, like,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
kind of, like, things of, like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
when you're, like, evolving out of your old self, right?
100%. And
So
like learning to wear a bra and like all
yeah.
of that stuff. Like I feel so much more like full about it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Ah, I love that.
Hmm.
Now, I feel like something that's like a huge part of what you do is definitely like the ball scene. And
Hmm.
I think maybe first, like, can you explain to the listeners what like voguing or the ball scene sort of is? And then I'm gonna ask my follow-up question to
Yeah, 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 totally.
that.
So ballroom is an underground queer LGBTQ BIPOC scene that sort of was dated back in the 1980s during the HIV/AIDS epidemic. It was kind of a space where specifically trans, Black, and Latinx folks would go to find a safe haven
Mhm.
because they were being so exiled from just like hetero society, especially during the HIV epidemic or the height of it, I should say. And so it's really deeply rooted in culture, and a lot of the stuff. And norms that we've had in the 1980s carried forward quite literally
Mhm.
till today. So there's different categories. There's stuff like performance, which you guys know is voguing. There's face. There's realness. There's bizarre. And then there's different houses. So a house is essentially like the team. And then there's kids in the house and parents in the house that, raise these kids to compete in these categories. And so while yes, it's competition based, there's an overlining bigger idea that like this keeps kids off of the streets and it teaches kids to come and get better every time that they walk up for a
Mhm.
category. It teaches chosen family, it teaches to be determined, it teaches to be passionate. And so those are all of the bigger, grander things about ballroom that I really love.
I love it, and I highly recommend, you dive into it.
Hmm.
It's, like, bananas to see how mainstream, like, ballroom has now
Oh
becoming
my
with,
God,
like, the
so
TV
mainstream.
shows
Yeah,
and,
yeah, yeah.
like, it's really cool to see, it really, like, growing in popularity because I think that it has such positive impacts, I think, on people.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So how has, like, the ballroom scene, I guess, like, impacted you and your life and your journey?
Yeah, I mean, I got into ballroom at 18. So
Yeah.
like really
Love
pivotal
it.
times, especially just at the start of my transition. And I was struggling to find representation as a trans woman of color in Toronto.
Mhm.
So that was one of the biggest like clicks for me was that like I could see people like me, but then also I was surrounded by so many amazing trans women
Yes.
that were older than me and that could offer me advice and that could give me guidance, which I think is again a huge privilege.
Mhm.
And then I found my gay mother, which is slightly different than a ballroom mother. A gay mother kind of comes in your life in a bit more of a personal way.
Mhm.
So she's there to guide you not just on the ballroom floor, but in your personal life and any focused goals that you have. And so I told her like, hey, I want to do this. I also want to be a model. And I was able to kind of use her and ballroom as a platform to just like spearhead it and just run through ballroom and like using what I learned on stage to then go on set and using the
Mhm.
confidence I learned there to go into rooms and audition and interview. And so like it was really cross linked to like just making me Jazmine Carter. Like I think I
Yes.
was Jazmine Carter in ballroom as like a figure and then I actually became her, which was
Yeah.
really wild.
I love that.
Mhm.
Did you learn anything else about yourself, like, through the ballroom?
I think one of the biggest things I'm learning now is that before it was a character, and now that
Yeah.
I am her. So it's now I actually have to unlearn a lot of things
Oh,
to
interesting.
reintroduce like the human side of me and to
What are
like
you unlearning?
well, like I spent so much time curating this image and this brand
Yes,
because it was something I would put on, right? Especially
totally.
before I even transitioned. Like I called myself a drag queen. So like
Yeah.
this was this persona versus now people just know me as that. Like it doesn't come off. So like
Yes,
now I have to unlearn like I need to have real conversations with people. And
totally.
like I don't know if you get in this habit when we go to like PR events or stuff, but you're taught so often to network.
Yes,
And now I want to learn how to just have real conversations with people
totally.
and real moments with people.
Agreed. I think it's like, I think you reach a point in your life where it's like the surface is it's not enough anymore,
Yeah, yeah,
and it's like
yeah.
you wanna go deeper than that and have, like, genuine connection with people, and
Totally.
I think it comes too with, like, with age and how comfortable and confident you feel within yourself, right? Because
Yeah.
I think vulnerability is still something that I think it takes a lot of courage for people to just, like,
And that's what I'm
have
learning.
conversations, which is I think seems so
Yeah.
bizarre,
Yeah, yeah.
We're not, like, writing letters and sending them by pigeons anymore of, like, talking about,
Yeah,
our
yeah, yeah,
lives,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's like we've sort of gone the opposite of, like, recluse in many
Literally.
ways, so
Yeah, yeah. I'm learning vulnerability. That's what I'm learning.
I love it, I love
Yeah.
it. Do you have, like, a a favorite memory from, like, one of the, like, ballrooms that you've done that, like, you'll never forget?
A favorite memory from a ball I've done.
Or good story?
I'm trying to think. I do have so many of them. So many are coming in at once. I think actually one this weekend just
Okay,
happened.
cool.
So I'm the mother of the House of Dior. It was our house premiere,
Mhm.
which was really exciting and really big. And I have a daughter. She looks Miles. I kid you not. She looks exactly like me. It's
Oh, I
no,
love that.
like
You
it's
should do a
really
photo shoot.
freaky. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, seriously, it's really freaky. And she debuted. She walked her first. This was her first time walking a ball. I did her makeup. I did her hair. And it made me really like emotional and somber because I remember the first night I walked ball and the
Mm.
life that I got and people coming up to me. And at the time I was Tamar's daughter and she was like, oh my God, you're going to be a problem. You're so great. You're so beautiful. And like I felt so seen and loved. And
Mhm.
I got to give that to her. And like, my daughter's really shy. She's not really, she doesn't want to model. Like that's not her vibe. But
Yes.
after seeing herself in glam and hair and the outfit and the life that she got, like I just watched her walk across that room and just command it. And she was so excited and she felt so confident and so hot. And like it just made me feel so full circle to give that to her. And like that was a moment I'll cherish forever.
And I think it's like to your point, it's such a like having those sort of moments are so important because I think when you feel othered for such a huge part of your life or you don't feel beautiful,
Hmm.
and when you can be in sort of these like scenario, like in sort of these situations where you can be celebrated and you're with like in a safe space and you're with a group of
Mhm.
people who want to celebrate you, like
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
just think that's so like it's so powerful, like I'll never forget when I moved, I was 18, I moved to Toronto
Yeah.
and I started like like kind of hosting these like costume parties.
Yeah.
And, like I would like spend all my money like on my
Yeah,
costume
yeah, yeah.
once a month, like
Yeah.
I would like literally be eating like peanut butter and like white bread for like that's all
Yeah.
I could afford to eat because I like spent all my money on my costumes. But but then I would like show up at this party and like, I would maybe be a part of the show or whatever. And it was
Yeah.
just like it was like the first time, as like an 18, 19-year-old that I experienced like feeling beautiful. And it's
Yeah.
like it's such a transformative thing because I think it just allowed me to like look so much deeper, I think, within myself and learn how to love myself because
Totally.
I think it's really hard to sort of get there in the beginning. So
100%. And it's like, where else do we go to get that validation and almost like
yeah,
just like to feel seen in your most authentic form? Like, I feel like it's so hard.
totally.
It's so interesting hearing you say that because I only know, like, I've been following you for years.
Yeah.
And so, like, everything I know of you, and I'm sure everybody else as well, it's like you're so fabulous all the way around. So, like, to hear the back end that, like, you were eating peanut butter and jelly, like, that's crazy.
Oh my
Like,
gosh.
but I love
Yeah.
that.
I mean, it's been a journey. Like, like I when I moved to Toronto, I was supposed to move here for a job.
Hmm.
And then I came here and they didn't end up giving me the job.
Where are you from?
I'm from Nova Scotia originally.
Oh,
So
okay,
I'm
okay,
like from
okay.
like a tiny little farming town
Oh my
out there.
goodness. Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
and so it's so funny like to then like come to the city and like, and then I was supposed to have this job and then I like had no work. And I'm like, oh my
Yeah,
God, I have $400 in my bank account. Like, how am I going to
yeah,
survive?
yeah, yeah.
So, like, thank goodness the village existed. And I met like people in there who like, they were like paying me to flyer. So I would like
Yeah,
stand
yeah.
outside of like clubs at night handing out
No
flyers and
way.
like, trying to do whatever I could to sort of survive, I
Yeah,
guess,
yeah.
like in the beginning of it. But, I think we all go on, sort of these journeys of like
But I love
coming
those
into our
stories.
queerness,
I
right?
love it. Like, you
Yeah,
made something out of nothing and, like, you
totally.
went to, like, where you thought you could like, where you knew you could be safe and, like, made it work.
Yeah, exactly. I love describing Toronto as like a blank canvas and like,
I would kill to be in Toronto's gay scene back then, though, because
I
like,
know.
there was, like, Flash and there was so like,
Totally.
it was just a
It was
whole
so different.
it was so
Like we
different.
actually had like a club kids scene
I
then, and like
know.
was such a bar star club kid, at the
Yeah, yeah,
time, but
yeah.
I like loved it, because it's like it felt like a little mini New York, I think
I
like at the
know.
time,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
So I miss that. Social media kind of took that away a lot.
Yeah.
Like people were like, oh, it's easier. I can just dress up at my house and take
Yeah, yeah,
pictures
yeah,
and put it
yeah.
on social media. Like
But it
people
was
stopped
like
going to the
people went
bar.
out and danced and people and
Yeah,
like and not people would go to the gay village for like and like not like straight people would go because they knew it was gonna be fun and
yeah,
exciting and electric. Like there was a different time. Like it was yeah, I just totally agree.
totally. Now, I'm curious though, like, did you ever feel othered within our community? Like, especially, going from, your fluidity to then into your like, your transness. Like, how did you find it hard to like find your place within our community?
Yeah, I found it really hard. Like I tried my very best to like tap into each niche group in our
Hmm.
community. And like I just didn't resonate with the village. Like I just
Yeah.
would go to cruise and tangos and like
Hmm.
it was drag queens, but again, like the type of drag that I was doing wasn't really like a performative drag.
Yes.
It teetered so into gender bending. And then there was also like a takeover of like cis white girls who were like really obsessed with drag race, like
Yes.
constantly at now at
Totally.
in just in the village, right?
Ugh.
Like bridesmaids. And it's not to say that they can't go. I'm just saying that
No,
like it was really hard to
it's a lot.
find. Yeah. And then I was looking for more like people of color that were
Hmm.
also experiencing like gender identity or sexual orientation, discoveries and stuff. And so yeah, it was a bit tricky at first. But now, like now, obviously, like I think I've really tapped into it.
Yeah. How did you navigate that though? Like, how
I
did you
just
go about it?
I honestly think I just got lucky. I had two friends who were like, "Oh, we got invited to a ball. Like,
Hmm.
I think you should come with us." And that was like the rest was history. And I just like stuck in that community,
Yeah.
especially because ballroom at the time was so underground and was so protective. Like all of it's on Facebook.
Yes.
So like imagine being like 18 of this generation and being
Yeah.
like, "How do you use a Facebook? Like,
Yeah.
what is that?"
Totally.
And so yeah, and I just think that now I spend a lot of my time like if I do see somebody that looks like me or might be going through the same thing, it's like like I just let them know like reach out to me, like let me know, let me be this person that you can pivot to
Hmm.
if you need, if you're looking for more folks of community and stuff like that.
Oh, I love it. I think it's important because I think that there's like this weird idea that I think like, even within like our smaller communities within our community,
Yeah,
like it's like there's like this sense of like competition and like there's like this sense of like survival and like that there's only going
totally.
to be like one thing for one person and that's
Totally.
it, and
Totally.
it's like I really don't believe in that, and I think it's like the sooner we like start all lifting each other up, like the
Totally.
more abundance that sort of comes
Agreed.
from that. But it's really like unfortunate that I think a lot of this sort of toxic kind of like self preservation kind of like exists,
Yeah.
within the community. So
And, like, now I go to the village and they're like, I mean, again, privilege, but, like,
yeah.
because I passed, they're like, "Why are you here?" And
Yeah.
I'm like, "Well, girl, like, little
Yeah.
do you know, like,
Totally.
it's now I have even a harder time finding, like, I do wanna go there and be
Yes.
around, like, our peers in our community and stuff, but now I find it even harder in a different way."
Totally. Agreed. I think it's like I can see why I think the ballroom scene would be like way safer than like,
Mhm.
like gay clubs and
Mhm.
stuff because it's still like, they're I mean, I even find it frustrating. I just like stopped going,
Yeah, because now there's, like, a mold of, like, slightly controversial.
no.
Now there's a
It's
mold of,
good.
like, the white twink takeover is, like,
Totally.
real, and, like,
100%.
God forbid you teeter on androgyny or gender bending. They look
Yeah.
at you like a freak of nature, and it's just, like, like, 20 years ago, before y'all were running around in a crop top and stuff, like,
Yeah.
it was people like you, people like me,
Totally.
who were, like, really pioneering this so that, like, people would let us have these spaces to come and
Exactly.
dance
Like
and
I
whatever.
wouldn't like sometimes they wouldn't let me into spaces because I was too feminine.
Yeah, and to me, it's
Like
like it's the mold of that is so silly to me
totally.
because it's like, I don't know, it's just so stupid.
No, it
So
absolutely is.
stupid.
And I think it's like it goes to the importance of like learning your history.
Yeah.
And, I think, I also was like 18 and super naive and
Yeah,
like was
yeah.
like, I'm the fucking shit. And, I didn't give a shit about like where, the privilege that I have and like the life that I have is like, thanks to like so many people who
Yeah.
have died and come before me,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
it's like, but it's like, I really like, I feel like I'm like I've turned into like the eye roll of like my youth because I'm like constantly talking about that now. It's like
Yeah.
you need to learn about like why you have the privileges that you have.
100%.
Like it's just like I find it so frustrating sometimes, or it's like hilarious because like sometimes I'll go into spaces where people don't really know who I am anymore, and
Yeah.
I find it like so interesting. Like when I walk into like Fashion Art Toronto or
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
see like the sea of people, like trans and non-binary and, men all walking in heels down that runway. And I was like, that didn't like, I had to break that mold, you
Yeah,
know?
and you watch the evolution change.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like I remember going for the first time and that like being the first person to do that at the
Yeah.
casting. And then, then the next season, like a few more people showed
Yeah,
up,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like, it's just like,
Totally.
and so it's, I don't know. I get like a little giggle out of it when people are like, who are you? And I'm like, oh my God.
Missing, I
Yeah.
walked so you could
Yeah.
run. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I get it. Trust
It makes
me.
me laugh.
Trust me.
But, I guess it's like the natural evolution of,
It is. Yeah.
like our spaces, right? And just like
Yeah.
how quickly you can like fall out of it, right?
Oh, trust me.
So
I'm like, yeah, it amazes me and it scares me a lot at the same time.
totally, because it's like also like it's a bit of an addiction, I think,
Oh,
because
100%.
like it's like a high, right? Like when you're in, whether it's like you're in a ball or you're like showing up at a club serving a look, like it's like the attention that you get. It's like what I feel like musicians must experience when they like
Yeah, yeah,
perform for
yeah, yeah.
people. It's like it becomes addictive, but like I think for both of us, like you reach a point where it's like, okay, I need to also like focus on my career and
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
can I
yeah.
keep investing my like time and money into
Yeah, yeah,
this
yeah.
if it's not like actually like gonna make me much
100%.
money? So
Luckily, one of the things my gay mom taught me, she was
yeah,
like, there will be another Jasmine. Like, I know
yes,
she's like, she taught me this right at 18. She's like, this will not end with you. That you're not the last one. There
hmm
will be another beautiful brown trans girl. And I'm thinking, like, where the hell are we going to find another one? Like, there's
yeah,
no way. And then I found my daughter and I really contextualized, like, okay, like, it's not about being the fabbest in the room. It's about
totally,
teaching the next generation so that they can carry
yes,
this legacy because
exactly,
inevitably I will get older. I will age out of the game. Like,
totally.
like, you know what I mean? Like, I won't fit that mold anymore, whatever. And so it's like, how do I give the same amount of life that I got to the next
Mhm.
person and just enjoyed it while I have it, but teach somebody else to like perfect it even more?
Oh my god, such good advice.
Yes, I try.
I love it. Why do you think that there is like, especially in Toronto, there is a lot of like, I guess like inequality or not inequalities, but like there isn't a lot of representation, I think, for I think like trans, like women of color and,
Hmm.
within, especially within like our scenes.
I don't know. It's a good question. I think we're just like societies of really slowly evolving,
Hmm.
slower than a rate than we obviously want it to. And so like I think it starts kind of with it's like I view it in the same way like we did with like the acceptance of like gay men, where like it started more like with white gay men and then
Hmm.
it progressed into
Yes.
black gay men. So I view it in that stance. Um, I don't know. And I look, there's a model called Alex Consani.
Hmm.
She's really popular on TikTok. And she talks a lot about like, when I joined the modeling scene, she really that she wanted to be the face of trans models, but she realized she was actually kind of working backwards
Hmm.
because now there's all these white models,
Yes.
white trans models in
Yes.
high fashion. Like there's a
Totally.
ton,
Yes.
but there's literally almost none of color
Yeah.
on the forefront the way she is. And she's like, now I'm realizing it's not about me being the face of representation. I need to like use my voice, my platform to be like, what about all these other girls who are
Totally.
just as deserving, just as beautiful, and literally fit the same mold, but why are they not being on the runway
Yes.
too? And
Exactly.
so I think it just might take a little bit more of that. I don't know if you know who Beauty by Nate is.
No.
She's like, I think she's really well known in the Toronto scene.
Okay.
But I think she does a really good job of like passing that baton when she can and giving those opportunities
I love
to
it.
like other trans girls of color.
Ah, so important.
Hmm.
So a little bit, I guess, like on that subject though, I guess like where do you, I guess, like see like the intersectionality, I guess, of your like I guess your culture and your transness? Like, is there like has there been an overlap?
Like
Like,
culture, like my like racial culture.
yeah,
I don't know. Oh my god, I've
yeah.
never been asked that. That's a great question. Um, I think I like separate them so drastically
How come?
because in my mind, based off of like my immediate family is
Mhm.
amazing, really
Yes.
accept, and again, huge privilege, really accepting, really loving. But like the distant family, like I never in a million years imagined them to come around just because like
Mhm.
culturally, Caribbean people are very unlikely to be accepting of LGBTQ
Yes.
people. And my family's also like super Christian. So
Mhm.
like I was like, oh, well, there's whatever, there's no way. And so like I checked out of that a long time ago. Like I think when I came out as gay alone, I was like, oh, they're never gonna accept me. So why would I merge the two worlds? Even though like I'm really proud to be where I'm from and I
Yes.
love my culture so much. I just figured that like that's gonna be something I have to rediscover on my own
Mhm.
and like take pride in on my own without the like significance of my family or my or the background, I guess you could say.
Totally. Yeah, I guess it's like how do you like reclaim your
Yeah,
power
it was really
within your
yeah, it was more
culture?
about, like, reclaiming it, yeah, because I don't see it, but luckily, my circle is so heavily Caribbean, which is my
Mhm.
background, I'm from Trinidad and Guyana, so, like and they're all queer.
Love
So, like,
it.
I've been able to, like it's such a safe space where, like, we share all the same norms that we had growing up, but in
Mhm.
such a safe space that it's, like, positive and reaffirming.
Yeah. Ah, I love that.
Mhm.
Because I guess, like, because too, I find it so interesting about the Caribbean islands because I'm so bad, I'm for totally, like, blanking on the name, but there was, like, a 3rd gender, like, that was a
Oh, yeah,
part
yeah,
of the
yeah, I think I know
Caribbean
what you're
that
talking about, yeah.
it was, like, more for, like, intersex people,
Mhm.
but there was a term, like, for it, and it wasn't until, like, a lot of, like, the Christian influence and, like, the
Yeah,
colonization that
totally.
happened that, like, sort of, like, erased a lot of, like, that, like, history of it,
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting, that, like, the cultures that are, so extremely against it that, like, yet have such a, like, deep history of transness kind of
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
existing, you
totally.
know?
I mean, we see that time and time again in history. Like trans people have been around for so long, and
Yeah.
it really just plays into like I think gender norms, and then like the
Mhm.
erasure from colonization
Totally.
that like took it away from us of like the acceptance.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah.
you mentioned earlier that, like, your immediate family seems to
Hmm.
be pretty, like, supportive.
Hmm.
Yeah, like, what was that journey like with them?
It's weird because they weren't the most accepting when I came out as like a gay man.
Okay.
But when I came out as a girl, I think it because they had seen me gender bending for so long.
Yes.
I think one, it made just made sense.
Yeah.
But, like, I had the worst relationship with my brothers, like,
Okay.
I moved out at 17 actually because my older
Yeah.
brother was, like, super emotionally and physically abusive,
Oh,
be like,
no.
strictly revolving around my, sexual orientation,
Yes.
and my mom was just not the greatest, but when I became his sister, like, caring, loving,
So
protective,
interesting.
my mom, treats me like the daughter she's always wanted or
Yeah.
something, like, I don't know, it was just a really a drastic change. I do think it helped that I didn't transition in front of them.
Mhm.
Like was moved out from 17 for that reason, and then I transitioned, and then I went back home. I think like a year ago,
Mhm.
so they didn't really have to watch me go through it.
Yeah.
I just they saw me as their son or their brother, and then I came back this girl.
Yes.
Um, but I think also, like, once I moved back home, I made it a point to, and I don't want to perpetuate this into anyone because this is something that just worked for me. And it was exhausting and a lot of work. But I
Yeah.
made sure that every time I left my room, I made sure that I presented as a girl so that if they did
Mhm.
misgender me or call me the wrong name, I made it an example out of them. Like, you cannot look at me right now and tell me that you see a boy.
Totally.
Like, you're doing it intentionally to be, negative or to,
Mhm.
to try and prove a point. But like, really look at me and break it down. Like, you're just being ignorant.
Yeah.
And so I think that also helped. And then my gay mom, actually, before I moved back in, went over to them, sat them down all alone without me
Really?
there, which I thought was insane, and was like, listen, she's coming back home, and this is a really big part of her. Don't fuck it up because she'll leave forever again. And like, it really means a lot to her that you guys get this right. Even if you don't believe in it, just get it right.
Yeah.
And I think that helped a lot too. Yeah.
That's,
It's just crazy.
but I think that's a really good piece of advice because I think it like, as absolutely exhausting and time consuming as
Yeah.
that is, I think it helps to hold them like accountable,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think for the changes that are happening.
And now I'm like even more like, before, like, I say within the first year or two living there, when family would come over and stuff, and like if I got misgendered or if they said the
Mhm.
wrong name, like I would let it slide or I'd feel too shy to speak up. Now I'm just at a point where I'm so fed up of it. Like, I don't have the time. Like, sometimes a family member will be like, "Oh, can I just call you Jay instead?" And I'm like, "No,
No.
my name's Jasmine.
Yeah.
If you don't want to call me Jasmine, just don't talk to me. Like, it's okay.
Totally.
We can pretend we don't know each other." Like,
Yeah.
I'm so far removed. And I think that comes from having such a strong group of friends and community
Mhm.
that respect me all the way through, that it's like, I have no time for
Yeah.
any of that on the personal side. Like, I'm so fine without it.
Wow. And it sounds like you have like such a great chosen family,
Mm,
and a gay mother. What
mhm.
I've never heard of like the term like gay mother before. This is actually the first time that I'm hearing it. So like what does it classify that as?
So a gay mother essentially fills the gaps and the roles and responsibilities that like your biological mother can't do for you, because
Okay.
your biological mother maybe didn't know how to raise a queer kid.
Yes.
So like my gay mother came in and taught me everything I know about sexual health,
Yeah.
taught me how to get home safely as a trans girl, taught me things about transitioning and womanhood that I might not have. She taught me that like, like while you're developing breasts, it's probably good you wear a bra because it's gonna like, give them support. It's
Yeah.
a little like you're 21 going through puberty now. Like it's
Yeah.
a bit like it just makes sense, and like really taught me how to navigate the dating world.
Mhm. Is your gay mother also like trans or how does that like
Tamar is more gender fluid.
okay,
She
cool.
Yeah, so
Love
kind
it.
of does the same sort of drag that I did, but still continues to do it.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so more gender fluid, non-binary. Yeah.
So cool.
Hmm.
I love it. And I think it's so powerful, like I feel so grateful that I also have a chosen family
Yeah.
and they have just like shown me the love and acceptance that I've always like dreamed of. And I think we as humans, I think we need to like let go sometimes of like the idea that like just because we're bound by blood that has to like
Yeah.
be the end
Yeah.
all and be all to family. And I think we have the
Totally.
power to like create a safe and loving space for ourselves.
I think
So
I think it's a magical ability. I tell my kids all the time, I'm like,
yeah,
straight cis people don't have this, right? Like when they
totally.
see us create this real blood like family bond,
Yeah,
they're amazed by it because they don't know what that is. That's not our thing. Like,
totally.
sure, they have friends or whatever, but like as queer people, we come together and form these alliances and these communities so deep. And I think the ability, like, sure, it may be rooted out of trauma and neglect, but like what we do with it
Hmm.
is like a magical superpower.
Totally.
And I don't think it's acknowledged enough, and I wish we could almost document it, because like it happens all around the world,
Totally.
and and like we have a separate community, but it's still happening in yours, and we still find ways to love on one another, and I think it's just so
It
beautiful.
really is. You said it so perfectly.
Thanks.
So I guess now, like, from the modeling and the ballroom scene, you're also doing like a ton of work like in the sexual health, like mental health, harm
Hmm.
reduction sort of sector. Like what led you into this sort of like as a career?
Yeah. So when I was 18, just navigating my little gay life,
Hmm.
I had no knowledge on anything sexual health related, especially gay sexual health.
Totally.
So like, thank God I found Tamar, who was throwing condoms at me
Yeah.
and was teaching me about STBBIs and, why it's important to be safe. And like, I had no idea what HIV was, no
Yes.
knowledge, didn't even understand why it's such a privilege that I have no idea what HIV is
Mm-hmm.
versus like, 30 years ago when you would know about it.
Totally.
And now being a mother to ballroom kids and to my own kids and just seeing them also at 18
Mm-hmm.
having no idea about any STBBIs, no idea what HIV is. No, they weren't on prep before they're on prep now, but they weren't on prep before they met me and they didn't understand the importance. They didn't know what super gonorrhea was and all these things. And like the same fear that Tamar had when she
Mm-hmm.
met me, I didn't understand. I was like, oh, whatever, it's just an STBI.
Yeah.
And it's like, I have the same fear where it's like, I just want you guys to have the knowledge to be safe and to make the right decisions that you can and protect yourself. And so I was already doing that in my community and
Mm-hmm.
teaching all these kids like why to be safe, but like in a fun way. Like I'd be like, girl, if you're gonna have sex, have the most sex in the world, do it. But
Yeah.
like, here's 5,000 condoms.
Totally.
Or like, why not get on prep? Like it's just an extra safety blanket. Like I was never
Yes.
preaching to them. It was just more like a fun conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got introduced to the team at Canfar and Sexfluent, and I saw that like what they were trying to do is a modernized approach to
Yes.
sexual health, mental health, and gender identity, where it's like it's not about handing out pamphlets. Youth are not going to read them,
No.
right? Like, how do we actually reach youth where they are
Mm-hmm.
and like make it accessible for them and make it fun and make it relatable? Like, sex and sexual health and gender identity is far more advanced than what they're teaching in schools. And so, like,
Totally.
how do we actually like sit down and look at like what's online, what's on dating apps, and like
Mm-hmm.
how do we make this applicable to them?
Absolutely. And like it is so important because I think that like they're like the access to information is there,
Hmm.
with the internet, but it's like there's so much information and like not all of it is like I think like inclusive and like relatable, and it's
Totally.
like it's so hard like trying to navigate finding the right information
Yeah,
that like can help someone,
totally.
like so much of it is like so medicinal and
Yeah,
like
yeah,
kind of like rooted for like how doctors would maybe like
yeah.
say it, and I don't think that like people digest it, like
100%. And I think youth aren't really going to look for it until it happens to them.
totally.
So now it's like, and it's like, well, we can't really do much about that. But like, how do we create a resource for them to go to once they decide, like, oh, wait,
Mhm.
like, I have never been tested. Like, should
Totally.
I go get tested? Like,
Yes.
how do I create a resource for them to make that like not scary, but also educational?
Mhm.
Because like I've even met other young trans girls who are like, I'm like, yeah, I get tested every 3 months. Like, oh, I've never been tested. I'm like, what? Never been tested once? And they're like, yeah, I
Totally.
didn't know that was like important or stuff. And it's like, okay, well, instead of like scaring them and freaking them out, like, how do we just have that conversation
Yeah.
and like
Empower them.
empower them? Exactly.
Yeah, because it is. I think it's like our school system like really fails us so
A
much,
thousand
and
percent.
especially with them wanting to remove more and more from like the
A thousand
curriculum. It's
percent.
just like this is the place where we have, children that they can learn,
Yeah, yeah,
about
yeah.
it, and we can really like set them up for success. And it's like really trying to like not shame them and like put them
Yeah.
in this sort of like you said, like sort of fear and abstinent based like kind
Yeah.
of education. It's just like it's not doing anyone any favors,
Yeah. And ignoring the evolution of society is
Totally.
so detrimental
Yeah,
because they're gonna do what we did, which is like run out of their small towns,
totally.
go to the city
Yeah,
and do it blindly. And
absolutely.
it's like, why ignore that this has been happening for years and years and years?
Totally.
And yeah, it's just it's silly. And one of the bigger things that I'm trying to reshift focus on is that there's this really great privilege, but also like demise where like youth today don't actually know about HIV or like the
Totally.
importance of it.
Yes.
And it's like, great, we've advanced so much in medication and in science that like, these kids are not experiencing it. They don't know
Mhm.
about it because they're less at risk at it. That's
Yes.
phenomenal. But then the lack of like awareness of history and how we got there is so
Totally.
important for like the fight against stigma.
Yes.
And so like it's like how do I get them to care about it and realize that
Mhm.
like this is great that you don't have to worry about it, but like it's also so important that you carry this torch forward
Totally.
because like this is not like this isn't even the end of it. We still have so much more to go. So like trying to make it like understanding and excited about their past and their history and their future.
Mhm.
Um yeah, that's
How
like
do you think we engage them?
so for me within ballroom and because I'm so centered around POC youth,
Mhm.
it's a bit easier because I'm like so much of our culture and history is rooted in the HIV epidemic,
Yes.
right? So it's easy for me to tap in and be like, come Vogue with me for a night or something,
Mhm.
right? And or like come to this realness workshop or whatever, and then also give a history lesson of like the fact that we're able to be in this room together is because X, Y, and Z fought this fight for us, and
Mhm.
like made these advancements so that like we don't have to worry about those things. And I think also shows like I don't know if you ever watch Pose,
Yeah,
do
favorite show.
phenomenal like depiction of what was really going on and why like we have it so good right now,
Mhm.
like why we're so privileged and why like they're not worrying about the same things that they were, you know, in
Totally.
the 1980s. And so those contexts I think really make youth resonate with the idea that wow, like I have it so good right now. And like I want it to get easier for the next generation. And that's something
Mhm.
that I constantly teach is how do we make it easier for the next version of you? And I
Totally.
give that context to them. Like imagine you had X, Y, and Z tools equipped, right? Like imagine you came out sooner. Imagine you stepped into your gender sooner. Imagine you reached these milestones 3 years
Mhm.
ago. What more you could accomplish than spending your time on that. Not everyone has their own journey. You can get there whenever you want. But
Yes.
if we make it easier and easier in society for everybody to get there, think of how much more things we can accomplish when
Totally.
the focus isn't just on that.
Well, exactly. Like I spent the last like 10, it was like a 10 years of my life just trying to figure out who I was and go through the roller coaster of what
Yeah.
that is. But if I can like skip over a lot the and go right into
We
like,
would have been doing this podcast 5
living.
years ago. Yeah,
Exactly,
yeah, yeah.
but like, a lot of the trauma and the things that I faced, in my life all came from just my lack of education,
Exactly.
and my lack of to access of, resources and
Yeah,
and help, so
totally.
yeah, it's it is. I think it's really important work that needs to happen. And I also think from like a marketing perspective too, like I think that like I like that, like, these sort of companies are like or, education is sort of like happening. Like, I love like when I'm watching porn and like a thing will come up for PrEP or like
Yeah,
for
yeah,
or like something about HIV,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like finding ways to like access like where that people are like having to watch
100%.
things, but like,
Like
it
on Grinder, when I get a Freddie ad, I'm like, this is amazing. Like
totally.
this makes so much sense. Like I just, yeah, I think thank God for like the evolution of like social media and stuff and like taking it in the right direction.
Totally, because I think it is. I think it is helping to combat a lot of stigma, but I think like you said, I think that there still is like a lot of, misinformation. I don't know if I've ever actually shared this with you, but like, like I knew nothing when I was diagnosed with HIV. Like
Really?
I thought I was gonna die. Like that's
Really?
I was just like all I knew was the 80s and like that
How long ago was that?
7 years ago.
Wow.
So it's like, I think it's like it's interesting, like because I was so naive of like, well, okay, well, I'm not sleeping with someone who has sores all over them,
Yeah, yeah,
so I'm
yeah.
not gonna get HIV,
Yeah.
and that was my like
I had the same mindset
yeah,
freshly at 18.
totally.
Like I got to see it for it to be there. Yeah.
Exactly, and like knew nothing about, chlamydia and gonorrhea
Me
and like
too.
all of these sort of things and like how to properly get tested. And I think it's like that's one of the biggest things is like I think how can we teach youth of like what is proper testing and like making sure that they're getting access to like the right testing. Cause like
Agreed.
for myself, like when I moved to Toronto, I moved to the West End. So I always went to the same walk-in clinic.
Yeah.
The walk-in clinic was never doing rectal swabs, even though I
I didn't know about swabs
was
either.
queer. Yeah.
Somebody told me about swabs like a year later.
Totally.
Yeah.
They would like the only time they would swab my throat is if I had an infection.
Hmm.
There was like white like masses in my throat.
Yeah.
And like I was always peeing into a cup.
Yeah.
They were never taking my blood. And then was telling me that I was totally fine.
That's insane.
Like I literally had been living with HIV for I don't even know how many years,
I never even thought about that. Oh
thinking
my
that I
God.
never
Yeah.
had that I didn't have it because I was getting tested and they were telling me that I was fine.
Yeah. And in your mind, you're like, I'm doing the right things.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Like
yeah, yeah.
the doctors are telling me how to test.
And yeah, you're like, who
And
else am I
I
supposed to
exactly,
trust?
like, I just assumed that that was what I did. I peed in a cup and, like, that was it.
And that's like why chosen family and stuff is so important. Cause like,
Yeah.
who else is going to tell you that like actually understands your lived experience, like
Yes.
based off of what we're doing and like the gay sex that we're all having,
Totally.
anyways, like how to better care for ourselves.
Yes.
And that's like, I think that's my biggest thing with Sexfluent is really looking at the ecosystem of chosen family and the
Mhm.
importance of it, right? Like the trickle of information that goes through it is so vital because like the doctors are missing points.
Totally.
Like the cis het society is missing points on us because they're not the lived experience, but will take the word for I'll take the word from you
Yeah.
before I'll take it from the doctors because of that
Absolutely.
lived experience, right? Like,
Totally.
and that's just a fact. Look at like to just say like you thought you could trust that person.
Mhm.
But so I think just really valuing like the dispersive of the information of what we do is how we can meet people better. Like I learned about HQ. I don't know if you've ever been.
No.
Gorgeous facility
Okay.
through a community member. And now was kind of, well, the nurses there know me by name now because I go
Yes.
so often. But I recommend everybody I know and they go because of me.
I love it. Where
And
can people find it?
HQ is, so it's for gay men, trans folks, it's gay men and trans folks and non-binary folks that do rapid STBBI testing, as well as next day HIV testing, sponsored by Canfor.
Yes.
It's on, I believe it's on College Street, but if you just Google HQ Toronto on Google, you'll find it.
I love it.
And it's an amazing facility. It's gorgeous, brand new. The nurses are super nice. Everyone's really inclusive and gender accepting, and it's all self-testing except for the blood.
Love it.
So you do all your swabs, you do all your urine yourself, you submit it to the lab, and then the nurses take your blood and you get your results typically the next day. And my favorite thing about them is they send you a text and they're like, hey, so-and-so, there's no need to return to the clinic. And they send you syphilis, gonorrhea, chlamydia, da-da-da.
Yeah.
They're like negative, 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 negative. And they offer support.
And they email this to you?
They text it to you.
They text it to you.
Yeah. Because back in the day, how they're like, oh, we'll call you if anything's wrong.
Totally.
It's like, that's not reassuring.
It's so daunting.
Yeah,
it's a mental health journey.
Yeah. And so I like that. And then they offer like a lot of great assistance if you do test positive for something and you want like mental help or just a social group and stuff. I also get my prep from there too.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And they help like set you up for that?
Yeah. Although, sorry, slightly off topic, but when I went to get my prep, I didn't eat for the day, and they took 6 vials of blood from me, and I never, like, sometimes I go get tested and I never eat beforehand, which you should eat because it's like only like 2 vials of blood or whatever. And like I almost fainted, and the lady's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "No, you just took 6 vials of blood from me.
It's a lot.
Do you think I'm gonna be okay?" So if you're gonna go get on prep, I just highly recommend that you eat beforehand.
Does your your hormone replacement therapy, does it impact the coverage of what PrEP protects you against at all?
Because I'm under 25, my PrEP is free because of that. Most of my HRT, my estrogen is not free.
No, sorry. I in terms of like protecting you against HIV, does it like impact your like the PrEP at all?
I don't think so. I've asked that question. They told me no. I've never had any issues.
Okay. It's so interesting because like something I just learned recently that like, you know, for a lot of like trans men and like women assigned female at birth, that it's like less effective.
Yeah, well, and I know because I used to date, my ex was a trans man. I know his PrEP is different than the one that I'm on.
Okay.
So but I've heard that as well. It is really interesting.
It is. It's like important to, you know, have those conversations, you
totally,
know? Like,
yeah.
Because like I had no idea and I was like, oh my gosh.
You just got your first injection the other day.
Yeah, I'm on my second one now.
Oh my God, how's that been?
It's been interesting.
Okay.
Like, you know, like it definitely, like every time now that I've gotten the second one, like the second one totally reacted so different than the first one.
Really?
Like the first one I was like really sore. I could barely sit for like 4 days, you know? Like,
is it like a diabetes needle? Like really?
Yeah, it's like the long one.
Oh, really?
You know, they have to go like into your muscle. So
that's the same one I do for HRT then.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like the pretty long one. And then that was fine. Like it was like whatever, just really sore, you know? And then the second time I got it, I was like really sore the first day. Then there was like no soreness. And then the soreness came back like 4 days later, but only in one of my hips.
So you got it here too.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So it's like, it's just like interesting to kind of like how I feel like every time. So it'll be interesting now the third time, like how that goes. Like I'm curious how my body will like react to it. Like, and I'm definitely like pretty tired, like for a couple days, like afterwards.
I bet.
Like I think my body's like trying to
getting
process
used to it. Yeah.
But I think it was really exciting when I got my first like round of blood work back and how much better my like liver and kidney functions were.
Really?
Like my doctor was like, you've had like drastic improvements.
That's amazing.
From like having to take the medication every day. So I think that's like a huge win. So
yeah, because I guess you've been taking it now for like over
like 7 years. Almost. Yeah. So
see, that's why I switched over to the shot for HRT too, because of the liver thing, right? I'm taking all these pills, and so I get it.
Totally.
Do you draw it yourself? Like
no. The nurse
you go to your nurse. Okay, cool.
I don't know if I could do it.
I've been transitioning for 3 years. I've never given myself a shot myself. So don't I totally get it. I refuse to do it so badly that I could teach a stranger to do it.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is how you draw it. This is how you're going to put it in me. This is what to do. But I refuse to do it myself. So I totally get it. Do you think you'll keep going with the shot?
I think so. Yeah. Like I definitely want to try it for a year and like see. Like I think it's nice to not like have the daily reminder anymore. I'm sure maybe you feel the same way with
totally
like, not having to take your hormones, you know, like it's like, because for you too, it's like once a week, right?
Once a week, yeah.
But with your shot, is it all, it's you're still doing it once a week, right?
Once a week, yeah. That's incredible. Do they notice, like, is the research far gone enough that they can tell that if there's a difference in your viral load? Like, does it drop even lower after doing the shot?
So My first one, it was like basically the same as like what it was with the pills. So
Yeah.
maybe I'll be curious to see if it does get lower
Yeah,
like
yeah,
after the
yeah.
second one. So
That's so
yeah, no,
amazing.
it is interesting.
I love that we were that far in science, man. That's incredible.
Totally.
I
And
love
I
that.
hope that it keeps going, you
Yeah,
know?
agreed, 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 agreed.
I love it. Well, my love, how can people find you and, follow your journey online?
Aw. You can find me at jasmine.pdf and at sexfluent.ca.
Love it. Thank you so much for coming on the show. You were amazing.
Thank you for having me. I had such a good time.
Same.